All right, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls, welcome. My name is Dave, Harmless Dave. Some people know me as, of course, and welcome back to the Real Music Observer, observing some real music in real time for real people today, just like you and me. Today, I have a really awesome special guest. He's the second Rock and Roll Hall of Famer that I've ever interviewed. So this is a real treat for me, and hopefully it will be for you too. Say hi to Richie Furay, everybody. Richie, how are you?
Hey, I'm great, David. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. It's just a real, blessing, a privilege, all that stuff to have you on. When I found out I was going to interview you, I had a power issue the other day when we were supposed to get together, and I'm like, I can't do this interview. I have no electricity. And I wasn't sure when it was going to come back on. So,
hey, hope there's a perfect time for everything. And here we are.
That's it. That's it. So I'm going to ask you all these hard, really difficult questions. We want to make news on this. Actually, we probably won't make any news, but it'll be fun. So you started.
Now if the questions are too hard and I disappear, you'll know what happened.
Be like an interview on Fox News where the guest just gets up and leaves.
Right? Walked away.
that would make news. So you started way back in the 1960s, making music with this group called Buffalo Springfield.
Yeah.
And just an amazing group of musicians with yourself and obviously Neil Young and Stephen Stills. And I know from what I've read, I think you were actually in a little folk type group even before that with Stills. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. We were in a group named after a folk club back in New York City, the Cafe A-Go-Go, and they called us the A-Go-Go Singers. Whoa.
That's interesting, huh? So you were the A-Go-Go Singers, right?
Yeah. Across the street, they had the Bitter End Singers, and then they had the Back Porch Majority. And how did we ever end up with the A-Go-Go Singers? I don't know what was happening.
I don't know, but it was the beginning of something really special.
Yep.
And everybody obviously knows about Buffalo Springfield. I think I want to say your most famous song with them is probably Kind Woman. Maybe not, but could be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That is probably the at least the song that I would probably be associated with, probably with the Springfield.
Yeah. And then later on in Poco, you guys would still perform that song with that pretty decent pedal steel player by the name of Rusty Young, the late great. I even got the shirt from Rusty's store a couple of years back before he passed away. I got into Poco, right? All my friends in high school, I'm dating back to like 1980-ish. Everybody's buying like The Long Run by the Eagles and different, just different stuff that was coming out at the time. And I brought home Poco Under the Gun with the classic horse logo and everything. In fact, yeah, here's the CD version of it with 2 albums on one. And my friends were like, what is that? And I'm like, it's Poco. And they're like, who the heck is Poco? And I said, oh man, I mean, if you haven't heard of Poco, right? So then I was forced to kind of go back through the years and listen to all the older material. Just an amazing band. I mean, before we get to Poco though, why did Buffalo Springfield stop? Why did you guys break up?
Well, it's kind of hard to keep a band together when there's 9 people in and out of the band in 2 years. It's like 1 step forward and 2 steps back. And, it's just hard to, that was the craziness of it all, with, I think Neil was having, issues just deciding if he really wanted to be in a band.
Yeah.
And then Bruce was having other issues. It was a Canadian band basically with Stephen and me being the only Americans in the band, but Dewey, Bruce, and Neil were all Canadians. So those guys us Canucks up there, man, I don't know what to say about it.
So it was a Canadian problem. We'll just say that. It was no.
Yeah, that's a good way to just sum it up.
Yeah, it was an international affair, and it didn't work out all that well. And but what a band! And then you just picked up right away, and picking up the pieces. Sorry,
right. And
then went right into Poco. And how did you recruit everybody for that band? What was your thought? Was we're going to be the like real hardcore country rock band, and we're not going to bend, because a lot of bands that got more commercial or they tried for hit records, you guys were like, we're just going to be who we are. And that was pretty cool.
Well, that's how it certainly started out. Jimmy Messina and I really became good friends. Jimmy was number 9 in the Buffalo Springfield scenario, and we became friends. And as my feelings was, as long as Steven was in a band or in the band, I would be in the band, because we established our relationship way back in New York, way back when. And I just felt, hey, as long as he's there, I'm there. I wanted to be loyal to him. But when Steven decided, he was off to do something else, then Jimmy and I just started putting our collective thoughts together on continuing on. There was no real issue about not stopping to play music. And we both had kind of this idea of, the crossover country and rock. And as I look back on it, thinking about it more today, I think of it as maybe the, remember the old rockabilly?
Yeah.
Eddie Cochran, Gene Vincent, Carl Perkins, Buddy Holly, even, that right. Kind of music. Ricky Nelson, who was a big influence. But those were the influences, but we wanted to cross over. Of course, I had a relationship with Graham Parsons in New York. Yeah. Graham moved to California, and he started a band also. And if you talk to Chris Hillman, who was in the band, he'd probably tell you we weren't a country rock band. We were a country band. We were playing all the dives in Los Angeles and all those little bars. But Poco was certainly a country rock band. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, with the shirt that you have on there, that Rusty was probably the one person that really made us fulfill that vision that Jimmy and I had, in that we weren't just another California 3-guitar band. We had this instrument that was strictly a country instrument at the time. And he played that steel guitar like nobody else.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Paul Cotton, one time he was talking about the song The Heart of the Night, and he said it was something different, the way Rusty played on that. He almost introduced that instrument to a whole new crowd of people who were more adult contemporary oriented, that you could kind of fuse that country sound, but almost make it sound like a different kind of instrument. It was just, it's a breathtaking song.
He was very creative. Rusty was a very creative guy. I mean, I just came from Nashville, where they opened up a country rock display in the country museum there out there, the Hall of Fame. And people were, Al Perkins was there, Dan Dugmore was there, and J.D. Maness and all, and these guys all mentioned Rusty as being an influence in what they did. So Rusty was a creator. He was someone that was he was always, I mean, who's going to play a steel guitar through a Leslie cabinet, make it sound like an organ? I mean, it's like he was really great at that.
Yeah, and that's, you're obviously, the proper terminology. I'm just kind of, as a listener, I'm going, I've never heard anything that sounds like that. Poco in the Hall of Fame. Why not? Why aren't Poco in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Not enough dirt. So, what can I say, man? I have no idea. If anything, I think that Poco, should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, as far as creating a genre of music that went on to be the most popular, probably American music. And that's not to miss the Beach Boys and all of their stuff and all. But I mean, we created a genre of music, and the Eagles obviously became, one of America's, most popular. They're still out playing today, and two of my bass players ended up in the Eagles. But why we're not in there, if for anything, we should be there as far as a pioneer and influence on somebody. I mean, maybe we didn't have the hit records, the string of hit records.
Right.
But man, we had an influence that actually moved America.
Yeah. Yeah, that the first Deliverance, and then there's a new Deliverance album if people didn't know that. But the first one, when I go listen to that, it's like electric. Like you guys, the recording, the energy, the whole vibe of that, even if you don't like that genre of music, it just, if that show were words, it would jump off a page because of the way you guys sounded in that room. And I don't know if it was the way they engineered the recording, but man, were you guys on fire. Did you know that night was going to be that good?
Well, you know what? Whenever I walked on stage, I always felt Poco was going to be good. Whatever we did, we had quite a following in Los Angeles at the time, and it was now, of course, the record that you're talking about was recorded in Madison Square Garden at one of the halls there, and also at the back, I think at the Back Bay Theater in Boston.
Yeah.
That was where the original Deliverance album was recorded. And I just felt, every time we walked on, we were prepared.
Yeah.
We were prepared to deliver.
Yeah.
And that's what we were doing with Deliverance. We were there, and we took that part of of it seriously. We had, when people were paying money to come see you, we want to deliver what we have to offer.
Yeah. And you did, and left quite a legacy. Now, you end up leaving Poco at some point, and how did that happen?
I got crazy. I not in that I left Poco, but at that point in time, there was so much going on in my life, stuff that wouldn't even reveal itself for probably another year later. But here's the honest truth, man. I had gone, and I'm only going to speak honestly. I don't,
Right.
I'm not going to make things up. I'd seen Stephen and Neil go off to great success. Jimmy Messina had gone off with Kenny. Randy had gone off with the Eagles, and all these. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm just as talented as these guys are. Now that's my ego speaking, so you can laugh. That's okay.
No, you are though. Let's know. Wait. I'm going to say that you are. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and so I was just, because then, what you mentioned just a few minutes ago, it was about the music in the beginning, but then after that, there was something else that would take it to another limit. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't happening. And when we recorded Good Feeling to Know, everybody thought that this is the record, this is the song that's going to launch Poco into that other, up to that other level. And when it didn't happen, it just was like a sucker punch to me. Yeah. And that's when I just went to David Geffen, who was a friend of mine, and asked him, hey, what do you got in mind? Because I don't think this is going to happen. Yeah. And he's, well, Chris Hillman's looking for something to do right now, and JD Souther's looking for, so let's just put together another super group like Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And I'm thinking, and that'll solve the problem.
Yeah. Well,
so it was like my mind was just like I was being driven rather than being led or leading. I was being driven at that time for something that was not causing me maybe to make the right decisions or whatever. I mean, I'm not saying, I think I lost a lot of Poco fans when I actually did leave Poco. I think to this day, people resent that, and it's all these years later. I'm sorry for that, but I think people, resent the fact that I did leave Poco. But there was more to it than just that. My whole life was about, as soon as Souther, Hill, and Furay got together, my whole life was about to turn upside down with personal things that I didn't even see coming.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that a little bit, because you met this, or there's a guy in the band, and you already mentioned him, Al Perkins, right? Yeah. So Al Perkins must have he was probably bending your ear a lot about one particular topic. And and what I've read is that you were having some personal issues at the time, namely, I think, with your marriage. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. Right on. Yeah.
Yeah. And so one thing led to another, as they say. We'll do the Cliff Notes version of it. And you became a Christian, like, boom, right? Did it happen that quickly, or was it?
Well, it didn't happen that quickly. And the story is true. I did not want Al in the band. and why didn't I want him in the band? He had a little fish sticker on his guitar that said Jesus is Lord. Now, Al could have been anything. Wow. He could have been embraced any religion, or been he could have been a drunk, he could have been a drug guy, and it wouldn't have mattered. But because he had a sticker on, that stopped me. But Al's thing, once Chris, because Chris is the one that brought him to the band, and so thankful right now that he came into the band. Al is such a dynamic, and oh man, what a musician.
Yeah.
But what a man who lives his faith. And that's what I really, and he shared over and over and over and over with me. He had a little routine. He'd invite me over for dinner. You want to pray? He'd invite me over for dinner. And I kept saying, no. Till one day in Aspen, I don't know what the difference was then, but he said, hey, come on over. We were there to actually work on our upcoming national tour, and Southerham and Furay. And Al called me up and said, hey, come on over for dinner. And I knew exactly what was going to happen. And I knew right in my heart at that time, I was going to tell him yes. Now, I don't know if I told him yes to get him off my back or what, but because the Lord caught up with me shortly thereafter and that's when he pulled the carpet right out from under me. And it was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. He said, you made a commitment to me. Now let's talk about it.
Yeah. Wow. And I love hearing these stories, and there are several musicians from the 70s. I think of the late, great Dan Peake from America, who also had this really strong conversion, and
Sure.
He was and he was brilliant. He was kind of like people don't realize how important he was to that band, because the band would still produce some great music afterwards, but not probably at the level that they were at when Dan was in the band and when they had George Martin producing the records. But he had a real strong testimony and went on to make some really good Christian oriented music. Like I'm also thinking of Mark Farner from Grand Funk Railroad,
Yeah, Mark, sure.
And Kerry Livgren from Kansas,
Absolutely.
who was always kind of writing these songs anyway, right? And then, by the early 80s, it was obvious that Kerry had a higher calling, and you had a higher calling, so much higher, Richie, that you decided to become a church pastor.
Yeah, and that was something else. My whole life, I haven't really planned any of this. And if somebody would have told me, number one, I'm going to be a Christian, number two, I'm going to be a pastor, I would have looked at them and said, you're nuts, And so when the whole thing came around, it's interesting. My good friend Tom Stipe, that I wrote a lot of songs with early on after I became a believer, I sat down, I talked to him at one point in time, and Tom has since gone on to be with the Lord. But I talked to him, I said, man, I it's like, I'm not sure what the Lord's doing with me now, but I think he's calling me to pastor a church. He said, that's a 10-year commitment.
Wow.
It's like a 10-year, it's a lifelong commitment, man. I mean, I'm not the pastor of a church now. I did retire from pastoring in 2017 on Christmas Eve. But, you never retire, I mean, it's ministry all the time,
Yeah. And it's such a great story. I mean, when you're called, right? I mean, I think that's the bottom line. And how did you reconcile, early on when I became a Christian, people said, well, now you have to stop listening to that evil rock music, because that's all from the devil. It's Satan's playground. What are you doing? It's it's that time signature. People start moving around, and how did you reconcile that?
It's interesting. I mean, there's a scripture that says, anyone who puts his hand to the plow and looks back, is not worthy of the kingdom of God. And that wasn't really what, drove me at the time. But you're right. I mean, I have a good friend, Peter Nobler. I don't know if you know who Peter is. Peter was the editor of Crawdaddy magazine, and he had a bunch of people write, their story about what was going on in your life when you became 30 or whatever, because a lot of the rock and roll musicians were getting older, and we were old at 30, man. Let me tell you. And I sat down and I wrote him my testimony, and he wrote back and said, I can't print this. Yeah. This will ruin your career. And I said, this is what's going on in my life. And he did print it. But yeah, people, it's like, how do I reconcile it? You know what? I'm a believer, and I write the music that comes out, of my heart, and it hasn't really affected how I write. I write songs. I've been known as a love songwriter, and people can interpret a song about my wife or about the Lord, so it's pretty pretty simple.
Yeah. I mean, didn't David Geffen at one point say to you something like, hey, Richie, I'm really happy for your newfound faith or whatever, but when you do these albums, don't be too Jesus. Like don't say too much about him. Is that true, or is that a
Don't
rumor?
give me any of that Jesus music. That was from I've Got a Reason.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, the record I've Got a Reason doesn't have the name of Jesus on that album anywhere.
Right.
And yet that record, like a lot of the other things that, like with Poco, we were too rock for country and too country for rock, you know?
Yeah.
Well, when I became a believer, I've Got a Reason was too Christian for the secular market and too secular for the Christian market. So, you know, what do you do, man? You just do what you do and let the chips fall where they are. And there you go.
Yeah. It's a long time ago now, which is kind of weird. But when this album came out, I was ecstatic because I had never heard an album, you know, a newer album with this original lineup, right? And everybody got back together. Randy's there, Jim Messina's there. And I'll tell you, from start to finish, you guys all brought like amazing songs to the table. And it's kind of funny how Rusty again brings this song, which becomes probably, I don't want to say it's the signature song for Poco or the highest charting song, but it might be, Call It Love. But you had a song on there, I think, When It All Began, right? Which was tracing everything back. What was that like? That was like the late 1980s. You had already been, you know, a Christian for a number of years and in the ministry, and then you're pulled back to this. I mean, how did that all come together?
Well, all I wanted to do was to make music, and I actually had more songs. I had I did an album shortly thereafter called Heartbeat of Love, and that song was pretty much done.
Yeah.
Another song, Forever With You, was pretty much done, but everything got rejected.
Oh.
And it became a trial for me. You know, all I wanted to do was make music, and it became obvious that there was something else that was going on, and it became, it was not the best experience of my life. I mean, I wanted also to have Timothy and Paul contribute to this record.
Right.
And that got shot down as well, you know, because I thought that they were very integral parts of certain aspects of Poco and all. But I think, you know, the main thing with that song, it did have the original lyrics of that song had some things that were very non-Poco, and it offended me, you know. And so I had, you know, Jimmy jumped in and did some changes with the original writers, but it was not really the best experience that I had, unfortunately, you know, because I was looking forward to it too, getting back with the guys, you know, and doing this music, but it didn't turn out to be a real great experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this, it was kind of weird because I had kind of cut my teeth on the Poco with Paul Cotton in it. I always said that Paul Cotton was like a poor man's Stephen Stills. Like his playing style to me kind of reminded me of Stephen a little bit. I don't know if you see it that way, but I always thought he was like this super underrated player that didn't get a whole lot of recognition. But all of that material from like the late 70s into the early 80s, they had 2 albums that they did for Atlantic Records that were, I think, excellent, that were ignored. It was just so weird how record labels, I mean, their 2 biggest successes are obviously, well, their biggest is the Legend album, not this is
Crazy Lovin' and
this is Legacy, and I always get them mixed up, but that kind of broke them out. But then that was kind of it. You know, the second album came out, the one after that. I mean, it was just weird because I'm always thinking these guys are always in the shadow of the Eagles, right? The Eagles break up and then they kind of called it quits for a while, and they came back, and then sporadically through the years, you showed up at a lot of the reunion concerts and different things that they did, which was, it seemed like you guys all liked each other despite all the turmoil and everything.
I have always appreciated and liked the guys and always had fun playing with them. You know, as far as Paul, you know, Paul, I don't look at him as a poor man. Who did you say, poor man Jimmy? Is that what you said?
I hope nobody takes that the wrong way. I say, when I say poor man's version of somebody, I say it's like kind of like an unknown, like if you couldn't afford to go see Stephen Stills, right, you could pay half the price to see Paul Cotton play, and he can kind of do a lot of the same things. No,
Paul was just stylized.
yeah,
Paul was Paul Cotton.
yeah,
And I mean, as far as his voice
yeah,
and as far as his guitar playing, you knew when it was Paul playing that guitar. And that's one of the neat things that, that I feel, over my career, I've played with some of these guys, man, that were just, they were unique in their own way. And we all blended to make a creative sound that went beyond just the individual. It was part of the whole group thing. But Paul was very stylized. And I mean, he was definitely a dynamic force in Poco when when he joined the band and with Timothy. And as far as it goes, that was probably my favorite grouping of the band as well.
Yeah. Now you mentioned you're getting a little tired of the Eagles taking your bass players, right? I mean, that's such a great, I mean, it's a good story. I'm watching the Eagles documentary and watching the late Glenn Frey talk about, how the only guy who could replace Randy when he quit was with Timothy B. Schmidt. And I'm just thinking, man, Poco's got to be thinking, all right, what are we doing? We were just farming these, like we're the farm team and we're sending our guys to the major league. And I'm thinking, no, you guys are the major league. That's why they keep taking your guys, and were you weren't ever offered a gig, right, with the Eagles. I know this is kind of a left field question, but was anybody else asked, hey, would you like to join the Eagles?
No, I don't think so. I
No?
think that it was just those two. And all I can say, man, as I look back and I say, man, I'm just a good judge of musicianship, man.
Just keep bringing them in,
Timothy and Randy auditioned for Poco, if I remember, on the same day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And for whatever reason it was, Randy got the job, great talent, obviously, no doubt. And all, but when he decided to pull up stakes and go, went right up to Sacramento and got Timothy. But I had this little letter that Timothy wrote after his audition, and I just found it in a box of stuff I was looking at several years ago, and said, hey, thanks a lot for letting me have the opportunity to audition for the band, and I know you guys will pick the right guy, and this and that and the other, and but da 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 da. And he said, but that's just who Timothy is. That's just his heart, man. Just thank you. And so I framed that thing and sent it off to him, because it probably fits in his memorabilia better than in mine. But it was quite amazing. Yeah, they both auditioned on the same day, from what my recollection is.
Wow, that's great. That was a hard choice to make.
Oh, very hard choice. Yeah, both so talented.
Yeah, Randy gave us "Take It to the Limit," which is one of the great songs of the whatever era. It's just amazing. And Tim, obviously, one thing about Tim is I wish they had used him more. I mean, he's got such an amazing voice. Give him a few more lead vocals, but that's just me. Anyway, so you've been still pretty busy, even these days, Richie, right? There's a documentary apparently that's coming. I don't know if you're working on that or somebody else is working on that.
Yeah, it's coming to a close. It's winding down. Finally got all the interviews that we need, except for one, which was we're planned to get when I go to California in a couple months. At the 1st of December, we need that interview, and it's all planned and scheduled. And it's only been postponed because the first time the war in Ukraine broke out, and one of the guys said, man, I got to clear my calendar. I can't think about anything. And then the second time that it was to happen, the guy got COVID. And not the same guy, but the other guy got COVID. And so this time, we're hoping that everybody will be able to get together. I know that Cameron Crowe's going to be there, and Stephen and Neil will be there.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So it'll be a fun interview. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe it'll be out on like a streaming platform. Do you know where it's going to debut?
Yeah, we're hoping. I mean, David Stone and Denny Klein are the ones that are really David's been working with me now. Boy, I tell you what, I wish I'd had David Stone working as my quote unquote manager back when I was at least a younger fella.
Yeah.
He has just been. I mean, I would have never done the reunion thing with the Deliverant album that we did at the Troubadour. Um, Certainly wouldn't have done this documentary. It's been his heart and soul to do it, and so he and Denny have put it together, and it's just gonna. I hope I'm around to see it.
I mean, you sound great, by the way. On that, you mentioned the new Deliverant, which I mentioned earlier, came out a couple of years ago, right? I mean, just you sound just like you've always sounded. I mean, are you out there doing gigs on a regular basis, or no?
It's spotty. You know, I just released an album that actually was recorded with my good friend Val Gray.
Wow.
Back in 2019, we went to Nashville, and it was his idea to record iconic country songs or country songs, really. And so it finally got released in July, so I am working. I was working doing some promotion and stuff on that. Obviously, I just came from the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum and did several things there. I did some concerts for the promotion of In the Country, and getting ready to go back to New York to visit with a friend of mine who pastors Harvest Christian Fellowship. We're going to do. It's still a mixture of things, you know, because then I turn right around and go back to New York and got a couple shows planned. One on the island, on Long Island, one on in New Jersey, and then I mean, things are still being booked, and I'm thinking, oh my man, I want to retire, but I can't do it, man. And you know what? I love being out. Yeah. I don't like getting there.
Yeah.
But I love being there. You know,
I got you. Traveling is it's a fun experience. I mean, I where I live in Florida, I mean, to go to Tampa or to Orlando or wherever, it's really a pain. It's not my favorite thing to do.
And when you have to deal with airports, it gets even, you know, just more crazy. Yeah, it's just something that's not.
Looks like you have a nice digs there in Colorado. I mean, why would you want to? I think I saw a picture of the wood stove on Facebook. I was like, that's a nice wood stove.
Oh, it's really cool, man. I almost threw the thing away from our house that we moved down from about, 6-7 miles west of here where we live, and a little bit higher. We were about 8,500 square feet now. I mean, 8,500 altitude. Now we're down to about 7. But I almost threw the thing away, and it's a good thing I didn't, because, man, it livens up the old kitchen area, I'll tell you that, man. And then the heat just goes right out. And we needed to fire it up the other day.
Yeah, it's especially with these rising energy costs. You know, if you chop some wood or wood pellets or whatever, you know, maybe you can save a few bucks on top of everything else, right?
I got the wood pile out there. It would be banned now, I think, you know, if somebody wanted to do one of these. But, you know, everything has to be, you know, gas fired or whatever. But no, man, I go out and put the wood right in that deal.
Good for you. Well, Richie, it's been a pleasure, man. It's good to hear that you're still going strong. You sound great. How's your health? I know you just turned what, 58, 48, not too long
add
ago?
20 to that 50, and we'll be there, man. It's
I mean, you look great.
You know, health is good. Hey, we're all getting older, and you know, we keep watching, you know, I mean, having to, you know, keep tabs on things, but we're doing the best we can, and the Lord's been gracious to keep us healthy.
The world's a crazy place these days too, huh?
Yeah, it is, man. It's crazier than all get out, but looking for that new world coming.
Yeah. Amen to that, brother. All right. So again, thanks so much for being here. God bless you and everything that you're doing. And maybe, you know, at least another 20 years out on the road, I would say, before you have to retire, right?
Well, man, I'm hoping, well, never mind. I won't even say what I'm thinking, man. Anyway, thanks a lot, David.
You're hoping the Lord comes back soon, aren't you?
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
I knew it. All right. On that note, which is a good note to end on, again, I want to thank Richie Furay, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, for being here today. This was really, he's got
I got one more thing. Listen, I've got other new music out there that people like Poco music are not even aware of, but I got Heartbeat of Love and Hand in Hand, and just check out some of that music at my website.
All right. So new stuff only on the website. Can they go to Spotify? They could go anywhere.
Yeah,
or what?
you can get some of it on Spotify and Apple, but you can, if they want the hard copy, oh boy, they
All
can
right.
get it. Yeah.
You know what? Maybe when we're done, you can give me the info for that. I'll put it in the description of the video, and we'll
Cool.
drive some traffic. You know, because I've got thousands of I've got a few fans here, and we'll see what we could do for you, Richie.
Great. Okay. Thanks, David. Good talking to you, man.
Yeah.
Stay
God
safe
bless.
down there.
All right.